Pikachu, I choose you!
Okay, so today we're going to sculpt Pikachu, specifically this Pikachu. And because there are a few things I dislike more than watching an entire YouTube video of someone sculpting something, then by the end it looks nothing like the reference they had. It's like this big reveal, and the reveal is just, psych, couldn't do it. So here's my final, and now you can decide whether or not it's even worth the next 6 minutes of your life to bother with this process.
I've made a huge mistake.
Step 1, reference. Okay, so how do we even go about finding a reference image? I don't know, ever heard of Bing, the internet's second most popular search provider?
Second comes right after first.
With the raw power of Bing at our fingertips, we can easily do a search for Google and get our hands on those sweet, sweet results. Step 2, blocking out. Grab that reference image and start breaking it down to even simpler shapes. Because maybe you don't know how to sculpt a Pikachu, but we all know how to sculpt a jelly bean, a dodgeball, a couple of Pringle cans, lightning bolt tail, half an American football, and some classic pointy tubes for the ears. Put that all together and hang on 1 second. You didn't tell me you were a professional.
Perfection.
And we're underway, and this is about where I decided to throw out everything that I just said about Pringle cans and lightning bolt tails, and I just sort of sculpt everything from spheres, because that's the kind of person I am. A liar. This all sort of goes off the rails pretty quickly as well. In my mind, I thought I knew what Pikachu looked like. I didn't have any reference up, but I was like, I got this. And then pretty quickly it was evident that I don't got this, and I ended up sculpting this terrible rabbit. So now might be a great place to pause and just go over exactly what went wrong here. Basically, I was trying to sculpt this, and I sculpted this. So let that be a lesson to all of you.
You tried your best, and you failed miserably. The lesson is, never try.
Or perhaps a more accurate lesson, maybe keep trying until you eventually succeed. But enough about actually sculpting Pikachu, I think it's time for a segment that I like to call A Story. So when I was young, I wasn't allowed video games, but my parents eventually broke down and got me a Game Boy. And one of the games I got was Pokemon Red, and in my little barely formed child brain, it was one of the best games ever made. So when they released Pokemon Yellow, which was the exact same game as Pokemon Red, like a carbon copy, you bet your butt I went out and got that thing. Or more accurately, my mum went out and got that thing. The game stories were essentially identical, but now Pikachu would follow you around in the game world, and when you turned around and interacted with him, he would say Pikachu or something to that effect. Was it worth it? Not even a little bit. Did Child Maid love it? Yes. And at the end of the day, I think that's what consumerism is all about.
Got to buy your Pokemon. I've got to buy it. I've got to buy it.
Anyway, I think that's enough reminiscing about my childhood. If we can get back to the sculpting, guys, here's a hot tip for the tail. Chuck a box in place and then paint through your reference onto it. Cut out that shape, and then you've got geometry that matches exactly to your reference image, and it took you all of what, 5 seconds? Of course, if a client asks, then this was one of the hardest things you've ever done. Why, it almost took 10 hours, maybe longer. And because of that, you're gonna have to charge extra. On the flip side, if you want to buy clients, then don't worry, I don't engage in these types of price gouging procedures. I think like most people working in any kind of design field, I'm well aware that raising my prices even a little could see me moved on for a client's niece or nephew who's been learning Photoshop lately, and let's just say they're getting pretty good. Anyway, back to Pikachu, and I think it's starting to look a little bit better than the absolute garbage fire that it's looked like for most of this time. Don't ever get confused when you're watching a time lapse and think that you need to sculpt anywhere near this speed. Try to remember this is sped up about 5 billion%, and I've cut bits out that I deemed too boring. And now you're probably wondering, well, how on earth did this make the cut? And all I can say is, that hurts. That really hurts. So I think we've messed around with this for long enough, all the basic shapes are in there now, and we can start to combine everything. There are a myriad of different ways to sculpt, and you certainly don't have to do it this way. I personally just like creating individual forms and then combining them all together at the end, because I feel it gives me the most control over the end result. For me, this is one of the most enjoyable parts of the whole process, because the character is finally starting to come through, and you can focus solely on the appeal. Here I'm just masking out the mouth and pushing it all back so the tongue has a place to sit, but also to allow shadow when we come to actually lighting it. There was only one aspect where I really drifted away from the reference, and that was just adding this little fat pad here under his cheek. Basically, the geometry of his head was just crashing into his leg, so to try to create a bit more believability in his pose, I just created this little compression fold here. Overall, I think this just really adds to the character's cuteness, but also gives his body a sense of believability and weight. And from this point on, it really just is about refinement and just, oh my god, what have you done?
Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay
Well, thankfully we have undo buttons, or I would most certainly be out of a job. Getting right to the end now, and just some last minute corrections, some smoothing, some moving around, and then one final adjustment to the tail just to give it a taper as it goes down, and we're done. Moving right along to painting, and just using the same method that I used before where I painted through the geometry of the tail and then cut it out, but now we're going to paint through the reference image straight onto the model so that we get those colors right in the places where they need to be. This is definitely not the best way to do it, but it is a very fast way to do it, so if you went into a dedicated texture painting software, you would have much more control over your end result. However, Pikachu's like 5 colors and I'm incredibly lazy. Once you're done with all that, export your model, bring it into whatever your preferred rendering package is, spit out a turntable, and then show it off to all your friends, making sure you link a lot of your personal self-worth to whatever they happen to say about it. And that's it, we're all done. If you made it this far, then your reward is 1 turntable of Pikachu. But I know what you're thinking. Peter, is Pikachu popular enough to base your entire first YouTube video upon the shoulders of? Ooh, great hard-hitting question. I don't know, maybe let's check in with Japan. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be okay.